Yes, sir.
Good evening. At this point, I would like to ask Reverend John Wolf to lead us in an invocation before we get started tonight.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, guests, members of Troop 1459, thank you for being here. Fellow residents and landowners, I was thinking coming here this evening about the challenges that you all have faced as a council and the city in these difficult times. Today is General Motors went in foreclosure. The folks who were family members of the Air France flight. So many things that have taken place, the economy and all of that, and here is a new city. When you took office, you had no idea you were going to get this with all that has happened. But so tonight as we pray together, just thinking about the challenges we face for a community, and more folks are looking for a safe place to live. You know, when you dial 911, you really don't care what a police car costs or how much a fire truck costs. You just want to make sure it's the best available. And I know you as council members are probably laid awake at night thinking about the kinds of services that you've offered to the community and the struggles that you face. I don't know what it's like to operate a city. In fact, I know nothing about that. I knew there was something about operating a church and the challenges that happen inside that nobody gets to see. So I honor you tonight for your work. Let's pray. Lord, in these extraordinary times, it calls for people to be way beyond themselves, to take courage for conviction, to take the courage, especially as leaders in the community, to listen to the hearts and hopes and dreams of the residents, and then to have the difficult task of trying to dream forward as to what our city might become yet, even in the days ahead. So tonight, as we think about our issues here, we also think about our world, where people are starving tonight, where family members are living in excruciating fear that their loved ones are dead in this flight, places where our men and women are in harm's way in Iraq and Afghanistan, and issues that happen politically that we don't understand at all, and yet we have to look to you because you created us like yourself. Amid all the turmoil, we understand so well that nothing you put in place has changed even one split second. The stars are there, the sea is there, the wind, the rain, all of that happens with incredible timeliness, and you've never missed a beat. So help us to trust you. We offer this meeting now. We lift it up to you and pray your blessing upon it. In the name of the one who made us like himself, amen.
Thank you, Reverend Wolf. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, June 1st, 2009 to order. Will the city clerk please call the roll and make general announcements?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the June 1st, 2009 regular meeting. However, I would like to remind those in the audience to please silence all cell phones. Additionally, those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment, either during the public hearing or during the call for public comment, we do require that you complete a public comment card prior to speaking on that item. There is no public comment on consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by City Clerk's staff prior to the meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization if applicable. When you hear the bell, you'll have 30 seconds to complete your remarks. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided, however, that such an individual shall file a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of said organization. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you would expect to receive yourself. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Thurman. Here. Councilmember Julie Zonner Bailey. Here. Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Bert Hewitt.
Here.
Councilmember Tina Diaversa.
Here.
Councilmember Alan Tard.
Here. Thank you. Tonight we are fortunate to have some Boy Scouts with us from troop number 1459. We've got Sven Leiker, I believe that's the way you say your last name, Bjorn Leiker, Andy Holben, and Jordan Carr. So I'd like to ask you guys to step up behind us here and lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. You guys want to come on up here? Thank you very much. You guys want to step down here, and I'll ask the council to come down and get a picture. Do we have a picture? Do we have a camera here? Do you have a big camera?
Jerome Bettis was at the
One in my car. You want me to go get mine out of my car? She's got one on her desk. Let's.
Does anybody have an iPhone?
We can talk to Alan and put it on the city website.
Okay, come on. You want to just get.
It's not.
There we go.
We were having issues today, so we'll check. Make sure, because we were taking things down.
You guys stand right here and let the council get around.
I'll hit the same. Which way are we going? This way?
Yeah, right there. Jordan, come on back.
Oh, this
here.
way. Okay. Okay.
Right in there, so you can see. You can forward that one to Jason in case he wants to put it in the paper. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.
Jordan, where are you going to college?
West Georgia.
All right. You didn't say anything, did you? He just graduated from Milton High School, so I
West Georgia,
think
yeah.
that's like awesome.
Right, I want to thank everybody here tonight. Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Next item is approval of the meeting agenda. Agenda item number 09866.
Is there any other items to be considered tonight? Okay, if not, do I have a motion and a second?
I move to approve tonight's agenda for the June 1st, 2009 council session.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Bailey, second by Councilmember Tartt. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Next item is public comment. Public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and the city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting. There's no discussion on items on the consent agenda or first presentation from the public or from council. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk. Please remember this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. You will have 5 minutes for remarks. Do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment, sir.
Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Item number 1 is approval of the May 11th, 2009 work session minutes. Item number 2 is approval of the May 18th, 2009 regular meeting minutes.
Do I have a motion and a second?
I move to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Tartt, second by Councilmember Diaversa.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay. We don't have any reports and presentations, so I'm going to move on to the first presentation. Will the city clerk please sound the items?
RZ09-02, text amendment to amend Article 22.3.1, variances, variance considerations. Agenda item number 09869. The next item is RZ09-03, text amendment to amend Article 33, signs, Section 11, considerations. Agenda item number 09870.
Do I have a motion and a second?
I move to approve the first presentation.
Second. I have a motion by Councilmember Lust, second by Councilmember Hewitt.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Moving on to the first presentation and public hearing. Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Approval of an ordinance to adopt amendments to the fiscal 2009 budget for each fund of the City of Milton, Georgia, amending the amounts shown in each budget as expenditures, amending the several items of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. That's agenda item number 09871.
I think what I'd recommend we do tonight is handle this as a first presentation to go through a motion and a second to complete the first presentation part of this item, and then we'll open it up to Stacy for a brief presentation of public hearing as its first of two public hearings.
Okay.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve the first presentation of the ordinance to adopt amendments to the fiscal 2009 budget.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion by Councilmember Tartt, second by Councilmember Bailey.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay, at this point, I would like to open a public hearing of the ordinance to amend amendments to the fiscal 2009 budget.
Ms. Stacy Inglis?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The general fund, as you all know, has been hit by the economic conditions that we're currently facing right now, and there are a lot of revenue sources that we've realized through trending that it's not going to meet the budgeted appropriations that were expected in the beginning of the budget year. So the budget cut of $1,492,860 decrease is necessary. It's necessary for us to meet the budget. We had to also look at the expenditures to cut. The revenue amendments that we're looking at cutting, or that we're looking at adjusting right now, the highlighted ones, there's about a 6.5% decrease in initial projections, and the most significant ones are property taxes mostly. Last year we had a collection rate of 89%, and so when we were putting this budget together, we didn't have that data to go off of, and so based on that information, we decided that the 93% projections that we were expecting at the beginning of this fiscal year are just not going to happen. So we are suggesting a $1 million decrease for real and personal property taxes. That's in the current year line item. There's also a decrease of $524,000 in current year utility taxes. That is due to an error that happened in the tax digest that came from the Georgia Department of Revenue. There was an error that happened last year, I believe that we've spoken to you about this, where they coded the Milton area in with Fulton County, and all of that digest came to the city of Milton, and we didn't anticipate that much money initially. So we had an adjustment last year bringing in the utility tax, and this year is just, we were expecting $570,000, and we're only going to get $60,000 of that. So we had to adjust that down, a decrease of $524,000. Since the collection rate for last year's property taxes was expected to be higher than 89% that was actually collected, we didn't anticipate the prior year property tax collections for this in this budget year to be that much, but we're actually increasing this line item to account for all of the increases, I guess the collections that we had left over from last year's. This doesn't make any sense, I'm sorry. So we had to increase that line item of $435,000. The franchise fees are actually coming in higher than what we anticipated as well. Georgia Power and Sony EMC are both higher, so we're increasing that line item of $300,000. Local option sales tax is also where we're getting hit. Right now it's trending almost 13% lower than we were this time last year, so we're anticipating a decrease of $607,000 in that line item. And currently only 82% of Milton's businesses have actually renewed their business license, so we are anticipating a decrease of $70,000 in that line item. And that's just highlighting what, I'm not going to read through each and every single one of the decreases, but that's highlighting the revenue amendments that we're having to make. To offset the revenue decrease, there are several expenditures that we've cut. Nothing real major that we're not cutting any services or anything like that. These are items that we were able to identify within the budget. And I'm just going to briefly go through each of the departments and touch on what the major amendments were in that department. In the mayor and council, we decreased it by $56,000, and that is mainly due to the vacant executive aide position that we have not filled yet. In the city clerk budget, there really wasn't any significant change there that needs to be mentioned. In the city manager budget, the vacant assistant city manager position was accounted for, so we were able to cut $104,000 out of that budget. In the general administration budget, we've cut $29,000 out of that budget. The most significant line item there was an umbrella liability insurance that's actually included within the monthly payment for the CH2ML contract. It's not a separate item that we're charged separately for. The information technology budget, we had to increase that budget line item for professional fees because when I initially put together the budget, it's hard to make sure we have all of the formulas accounted for, and I accidentally did not include the formula that included the request for that budgeted line item. So we were putting in $18,000 for that, for the high-speed connection to Alfreda's 911 center. In the municipal court, we were able to cut $9,000 out of that budget, mainly for the security cost in the courtroom. In the public safety administration budget, the main thing we're able to cut here, actually two things, were the elimination of the public safety director position since Chris became the city manager. And then we initially budgeted at $4 a gallon for gasoline and diesel, and obviously that was basically due to the times that we were expecting last year, and we obviously don't need that much given the current gas prices, so we were cutting $80,000 there. A total of $151,000 is cut out of that budget. In police, we were able to cut $55,000. This was mainly due to a vacant position that was on hold until next fiscal year. In fire, we had to add $94,000 to that budget due to two positions that I initially left out of the budget. When I pulled in the salary and benefits spreadsheets last year based on the current payroll roster, there was one vacant position I didn't account for because a firefighter had jumped over to the police department, and that was I accidentally left it out. I didn't speak with the department head to look at the budget roster, so we have to add $94,000 to that budget. In the Public Works Department, we were cutting $545,000, but a large portion of that is actually being transferred over to the Capital Projects Fund for the NPDES project. It's not going to all get done this year, and it is actually a project that is considered a capital project. So we're moving that over to the capital project fund. The other portions, $85,000 is cut from the pothole repairs. It's not anticipated that we're going to use all of that money. Speed zoning request, $25,000 was cut because we were able to perform that in-house. And $50,000 for snow and ice control was not needed. In the Parks and Recreation Department, we were able to cut $20,000 due to we're not going to install the well at Bell Memorial Park. We put that in the budget last year because of the drought and the water restrictions that we were facing. It's anticipated that we're not going to face a drought this year, the rest of this year, so we're cutting that out of the budget. In the Community Development Department, we were able to cut $673,000, mainly due to performing a lot of the historic preservation and the tree preservation ordinance rewrites. We were able to perform those in-house with our committees. And as well as the Highway 9 design guidelines, we brought that in line with the expected costs and eliminated the budget for the Highway 9 LCI application. Other financing uses, this is where the large portion of the budget cuts came from. We didn't anticipate that much of basically we didn't anticipate the reserves to be fully funded last year whenever we were putting the budget together. Then we got the $4.1 million from Fulton County for the SSD money, and out of that we were able to fully fund the reserves as well as overages and revenues. So we were able to cut $607,000 out of money that we were going to put into the reserves to fully fund that line, but we didn't need it. And I will explain the other additions and cuts whenever I go to the other funds. Special Events Fund, I want to skip over. Confiscated Assets Fund, we're cutting that entire fund out because at this point we decided that it is not a guarantee that whenever we employ a narcotics detective that person will be able to pay for themselves. And so at this point it's just not feasible to employ a narcotics detective. So we cut that and eliminated that fund completely. In the operating grant fund, we cut $26,000 to account for the SAFER grant. It's been in revenues and expenditures to account for the SAFER grant for the rest of the remainder of this year. In the hotel motel tax fund, we cut $7,000 to basically match it with the trending that we are experiencing right now. In the capital projects fund, the revenues increases here are bringing in the NPDES project in the capital grant fund. We were able to transfer appropriations for the advanced life support equipment from the general fund. Decreased due to certain projects being eliminated. The eliminated projects were the council chamber improvements. We're obviously not going to do that, $100,000, and as well as the chamber's audio and visual upgrade. We cut that project. We also did not need the air and light cascade system since we actually have access to that through the Alpharetta IGA. And we are combining the resurfacing and patching of arterials and collectors and the resurfacing local roads, those two line items, into one line item for pavement management, just for ease of accounting. And those were the major changes in the capital projects fund. In the capital grant fund, we were able to cut $50,000 to match the contract cost for the transportation master plan. And those were the major adjustments.
Okay. As everyone knows, this is the first hearing, public hearing, first presentation. So at our next meeting, there'll be another hearing and time to ask any detailed questions. But if there's any general questions that council would like to ask Stacy, please feel free to go ahead.
This is just kind of a general question. It would either be for Ms. English or maybe for our city manager, just in terms of the vacant positions, knowing that we obviously still have some months ahead of us. Is it anticipated that some of those, particularly those that support our administration in the city manager's position, are we still anticipating pursuing those that were still in the budget?
That's correct. Yes, we've left that funding alone. And really the positions that are contemplated in this document that really just don't get funded, and I want to touch on that confiscated assets fund position. That was one that was funded at the beginning of the budget year with the notion that we could staff it so long as we didn't have to touch the general fund to account for any shortfall. And in this economy, whereas I am reasonably certain we could do that, that's one of those risks that's better taken when we're not faced with reducing a budget.
Sure, thank you. One other quick question, and it just relates to our umbrella and general liability insurance, and I understand that that's actually paid for through CH2M Hill. We've also had some dialogue and questions, though, about whether or not we can further reduce that expense just because of where we are in our cycle, and I just wondered, and it may not be now, but either during reports later this evening or maybe at the next presentation, if we could have an update as to whether or not any of those insurance costs are going to be similarly reduced just for some of the cost savings that may be identified.
Any other questions? Okay. Do we have any public comment?
We have no public comment.
All right. At this point, the public hearing is now closed. There's no zoning agenda tonight, so I'm going to move on to unfinished business. Will the city clerk please sound the item?
Our item under unfinished business is approval of an ordinance of the City Council to authorize Fulton County to conduct the election. First presentation of this item was on May 18th, 2009. Mr. Mayor and council members, the municipal general election will be on November 3rd for the mayor and council members districts 1, 3, and 5. The official code of Georgia provides that a municipality may authorize with a county to contract to conduct these elections. In your packet is an ordinance with the attached contract from Fulton County, and in that contract it will authorize the Fulton County Board of Registration to be the superintendent of this election, and they shall perform any and all functions for the city and any of its officials in connection with that election and any runoff thereof. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do I have any questions? Okay, do I have a motion and a second?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance for the City Council to authorize Fulton County to conduct the election November 3rd, 2009.
I'll second it.
A motion by Councilmember Diaversa, second by Councilmember Thurman. Any discussion? Hearing none.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay, let's move on to new business. Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Agenda item number 09872 is revision to task order 09-SSI-01 for traffic calming services with Street Smarts in the amount of $8,028.99. Mr. Carter Lucas.
Thank you. Mayor and City Council, this is a contract extension for Street Smarts to put together our traffic calming program that we heard last month. Contract is actually $7,528.56. We were able to get a little bit of savings from the engineer at the last minute there. What this contract will do will be the creation of 4 standard construction details for 4 different traffic calming measures that we would use in our overall program. It would detail the construction standards, pros and cons of each one, costs, estimated construction costs for each one. And these would then be used to develop those conceptual plans that we had talked about at the last meeting. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Lucas?
I have one question.
Julie?
Yes, thank you, Carter. As it relates just to the contract and also this particular task order, in terms of the presentation that was provided, it was mentioned that Street Smarts would also consider having those potential designs taken to the design review board. And in looking at the contract, it doesn't expressly mention that, and I'll leave that to both yourself and our city manager, but I wondered if we would want to mention that just to ensure that that's part of the process.
Our thought was that we as staff would take those either to the chairman or to the full board, depending on how he wanted to handle those.
Okay, just my recollection of our work session was that that was going to go to the design review board. I didn't know
Yes,
if it
ma'am.
needed to be stated here, but as long as that's an understanding before those final recommendations come back, that would be terrific.
Yes, ma'am. I think we'll be handling that at a staff level.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Okay, how about do I have a motion and a second?
I make a motion
for the revision to Task Order 09 SSI-01 for traffic calming services with Street Smarts, Inc.
Second.
For
Oh, sorry.
approximately $7,500.
Yes, sir.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Hewitt, second by Councilmember Tartt. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Approval of an application to the Department of Homeland Security for the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program sponsored by FEMA for the purchase of a diesel exhaust extraction system for 2 fire stations. Agenda item number 09873. Matt Marietta.
Good evening. This grant and the one following both come from the same pool of money. Based on the way the program rules are written from FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security, you can apply under different auspices. This represents the same program that's given us a SAFER grant, as well as we've applied each year for this AFG grant, which usually supplies equipment and tangible items. So for both of these, item number 2 and number 3, I come before you to ask your permission to tilt at the federal windmill one more time and see if we can get some funding to help bolster our fire department a little bit. The first item is for a diesel exhaust extractor system for our 2 older fire stations, both of which were built back in the 1970s. That would be the one on Thompson Road and the one out on 140. And this was an idea that was brought forward by our fire chief when he first came, recognizing something that they had in Florida where he came from and that we do not have. Specifically, every time you start that fire engine up, it belches diesel smoke out into the bay area, which is contiguous with the living area for our firefighters. So that over time of starting the fire truck up and driving it in and out all day long, that tends to build up and kind of permeates their living environment. So the NFPA has recognized that the elimination of that health hazard is a fairly important thing for firefighter safety. Also, because the NFPA and OSHA and other organizations have recognized this, FEMA has also made this one of their funding priorities for the AFG grant program this year. So given the age of our 2 fire stations and the fact that there's no exhaust systems, this is one of the applications that we're putting in for with your consent. And we've actually come up with some quotes for this. And total for 4 systems, it will be $23,000, $23,300 exactly. And as with the all other AFG programs, this one still carries a 10% match, despite the Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which has waived the match in some of the other grant programs. But that would give us a $2,300 match that we'd have to come up with if we are awarded this grant program.
Any questions for Matt? Julie?
My only question would be whether or not our budget has the $2,300 allocated. I believe we do, but just for the record.
Yeah, I can answer that question for this one. I'll answer for the next one, too, just to answer it once. If you all go back to when we adopted this first budget years ago, it seems like years ago, less than a year ago, there was this thing that we candidly called the bucket. And the bucket was one of those things that we were going to fund if, in fact, the HTRG grant money came forward. The second item is something that was in the bucket, although we have held off on spending what was in the bucket as we are trying to reduce our expenditures in the budget. So with the HTRG funding for both of these items, yes, I can be relatively certain that the return on our investment would be well worth us finding both of these dollar figures within the budget, knowing that it existed when the budget was adopted.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, Bill?
Well, I'd say for $2,330, we can't afford not to do this.
Correct.
And if we don't have it in the budget, I know there's a stipend available there for a certain council person I think we could use for that.
Fair enough.
It's a safe thing. It's a safe thing to do.
Any more questions? All right, do I have a motion and a second?
I'll put forward a motion, and that would be to approve agenda item number 09873, which is the approval of an application and also the accompanying resolution to the Department of Homeland Security for the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program sponsored by FEMA for the purchase of a diesel exhaust extraction system for 2 fire stations.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Bailey, second by Councilmember Diaversa. Any discussion? Hearing none.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
City Clerk, please sound the next item.
Approval of a grant application to the Department of Homeland Security for the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program sponsored by FEMA for the purchase of a tanker truck to serve as a water supply and spare apparatus for the fire department. Agenda item number 09874. Mr. Matt Marietta.
Needless to say, this is a much larger windmill. Basically, if y'all recall, as part of our budget preparation last year, we were discussing the purchase of a tanker truck to add to our fire department arsenal for 2 purposes. First of all, we have 80% fire hydrant coverage in the city, and I've spoken to some of the battalion chiefs that we have out there that have said they've had to lay half a mile worth of hose line from the fire hydrant to get up to the houses at times. Thankfully, we have lots of assistance nearby, and that hasn't been an issue to the point that we've had safety problems for citizens. Nobody's been harmed because of it. But it's very important. A tanker truck would allow us to start what's called a shuttle operation, where you set up a dump tank and drop all the water into it, and then that truck can drive to the nearest fire hydrant and fill up and then return. So it allows us to have a water source to draft off of in the absence of an immediate fire hydrant, short of laying miles of hose up the roadway. And then there's a second purpose for this, and the way that we've couched it is on a routine basis. Now, we have 4 fairly new fire apparatus that are still running pretty well, but you still have to get oil changed. You have to have tires changed on a regular basis. They have pieces of equipment that break, and this can take a fire truck out of service from anywhere to 20 minutes to 2, 3, 4, 5 hours while we're waiting for somebody to show up, depending on the nature of the repair. And if we properly configured this tanker truck, we could also make it so it can serve as a backup apparatus in the event that we have a catastrophic failure of one of our fire trucks that takes it out of service. So that will prevent us from having any kind of a delay in the provision of service to the citizens in that geographic area where the fire truck is located. At this point, we don't have anything in that capacity other than to borrow a truck from somebody else. And because of our rural character, FEMA actually prioritizes the provision of tanker trucks to cities, whether they'll do that in our case with our new fire apparatus that we just purchased in 2007. It remains to be seen, but there is a need in the city. This works out to $468,000 based on how we priced it and budgeted it last year. And this carries the same 10% match, so potentially it will be a $46,000 match on our part. There is also the potential that FEMA will call and say, well, we're interested in funding this, but probably not to that. Would you consider something less? And at that point, we'd have to reconfigure our specifications to match what they offer. And obviously, we'd come back and discuss that if that opportunity came up. Probably would be later on this year or in the fall if they actually did fund it.
Okay. Any questions for Matt? Okay. Do I have a motion and a second?
I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 09874, approval of a grant application to the Department of Homeland Security for the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program sponsored by FEMA for the purchase of a tanker truck to serve as a water supply and spare apparatus for the fire department.
Second motion.
The motion by Councilmember Tart, second by Councilmember Lusk. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
City Clerk, please sound the next item.
Approval for City Clerk Jeanette Marchafava to serve as Chief Municipal Registrar and Absentee Ballot Clerk, and approval for the Deputy City Clerk to serve as the Deputy Municipal Registrar. Agenda item number 09875. Mr. Mayor and council members, the Georgia Election Code does require under Section 21.2.212 that the appointment of the registrar be verified in the mayor and council minutes. Additionally, under Code Section 21.2380.1, it also provides for the appointment of an absentee ballot clerk. By approving this item, both of those items would be recorded in the minutes, and I'm available to answer any questions if you have them.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Marchafava? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion and a second?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve agenda item 4, number 09-875, to approve City Clerk Jeanette Marchafava to serve as Chief Municipal Registrar and absentee ballot clerk, and approval for Deputy City Clerk to serve as Deputy Municipal Registrar.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Diaversa, second by Councilmember Tartt. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Mr. Mayor, in my era, we are now moving to mayor and council reports.
Do I have any council reports tonight? Councilmember Thurman?
We're looking at holding a town hall type meeting for the Crabapple area, similar to what they did for Highway 9 in July. I know, I don't like it. So I just wanted to kind of give everybody a heads up. I think Bert and Bill will be hosting it with me, and we'll probably try to keep a similar format to what we did. I have asked JT Adams and John Whelan to both come if they can. They're working on coordinating a plan together for that northwest coordinate, which I have not seen yet, so they're working on that, and maybe they can present that to the community at that time.
Okay. Any other council members have anything they want to share?
I have a question for Councilmember Thurman. Is that going to be a publicly announced meeting so we can all attend that,
Yes,
right?
it will be publicly announced for everybody. Hopefully, everybody will attend. And I know some of the topics that I'd like to cover, of course, are transportation, which always is a problem in Crabapple. So I'm hoping we'll have staff at the meeting also that can answer questions.
Bill?
I'd like to report on our Memorial Day ceremony. Pulled it off in grand fashion. I'd like to specifically thank Linda, Ellie, Police Department, Fire Department, and coverage from the media, including Jason and his great write-up in the paper this week. We continue to get better. This was our second memorial celebration, and with our keynote speaker here, General Roy Beauchamp, I think it added a lot of dignity and solemnity to the occasion. Looking forward to having a bigger and better celebration next year, increasing our participation. I know we're competing with Roswell, who has the largest celebration in the state, and I think they know that we're on our heels of competing with them. Not that there's any competition involved, it's we're all doing the same thing here, but I'd like to see and hope for more Milton residents to participate in.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else? All right, let's move on to staff reports, beginning with our city manager.
All right. Come on, I didn't know. Were you going to give this staff or council report tonight?
No, I haven't gotten it yet.
Not got it yet? Okay.
I didn't see you hand it out, so I was okay.
Okay. Mayor, Council, I do have a couple of reports tonight. Next week, June the 8th, would be a regularly scheduled council workshop. We had potentially a couple of items on that workshop, but with the fact that we have 3 council members traveling, at this point I've indicated to our clerk that we're going to cancel the June work session. Those 2 items could certainly be held for another point, and even though we would in fact be quorumed, I think the information was important enough that it be shared with more than just 4 of the council members. So Want to let you know that you get a reprieve next week.
I think you made Jason happy. I can see his teeth smiling all the way up here.
I'm going on vacation next week.
Oh, that's good.
We did that for
arranged
you,
that.
Dang it, I think we ought to add some things to the, next week.
I think I need to go on vacation.
I would like to, though. I'm going to hit you in July and see if there's a possibility for 4 meetings in July. The 3 that are regularly scheduled, as well as I'd like you to look at your calendars for July the 27th. And let me know at some point whether or not you would be available for a special called meeting to deal completely with pavement management, the presentation that we put off at the work session of last month, to have July the 27th. That's the 4th Monday in July. So if you routinely keep your calendars open on July, I would ask that in exchange for a free week in June that you might be with us 4 weeks in July. That meeting shouldn't be too terribly long, but that is when all the consultants can get here from out of town. So.
I can think of 1,000 things I'd rather talk about on my birthday.
Oh.
But I will do it for you, Chris.
Oh, birthday party. We have a council meeting on my birthday in July.
Oh, really?
So if you would look at that, we do need to get back to the consultants fairly quickly so they can arrange travel plans and get presentations together, et cetera. If you'd just look at your calendar and let me know if the 27th will work, we'll get the consultant on board.
Chris, I might just suggest if maybe tomorrow you want to shoot an email to council.
An email, yes.
If you guys wouldn't mind responding back.
No problem.
I'm sorry, that was a work session?
It'll be just a special called work session with the purpose of discussing pavement management. Another item I want to bring to your attention tonight is we threw a lot at you in this budget amendment in a very short period of time. We did that on purpose because it was first presentation and we really wanted to just accomplish the public hearing portion. You'll have a more complete and comprehensive discussion on the budget at the June 15th meeting, but I would open the doors of City Hall to any of you in the next 2 weeks and would actually appreciate that if you have a list of questions, let's see what we can get answered and see what we might can work towards modifying if there's modifications that need to be done to that budget presentation. Let's see if we can get them done in the next 2 weeks rather than scrambling at the meeting on the 15th and trying to make modifications or answer questions on the fly. So the door is open to you. I've got one meeting already scheduled this week with the council members, so I'd welcome the rest of y'all if you have questions to do that as well. I want to respond to a couple of different things. Maybe from one from kind of a training perspective and one from just a general information perspective. You've received, many of you on council have received, and we've received at a staff level, several emails from specifically the Crooked Creek neighborhood. I don't want you to think that your staff is being non-responsive in responding to those emails, although we have been a bit cautious in the fact that I think, as we all know, there has been a threat of litigation in that particular case. Staff is not just willy-nilly with responses to those emails as they come in. Because of that threat of litigation, I think it's the appropriate thing to protect the city at this point and to work through our city attorney to provide responses to the emails, specifically the ones that are asking of staff or the council to confirm levels of safety of roadway, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want you to think that the staff is intentionally being non-responsive if you hear that from your constituents. But I want you to know that I think it's in the best interest of the city and its protection and safety at this point to formulate those responses with our city attorney. So I just want you to be aware of that. And finally, I want to, Councilmember Thurman had a good idea on potentially providing a small version of council training, if you will, on specifically what happens when a citizen wants to make a complaint about the staff, so any of the city staff's performance, whether that's in a police department, a fire department, a community development department, a public works department, any of those particular departments. I think what we see is largely those that go out and affect people's lives and otherwise take action against them that they may not like, sometimes are more apt to complain than others. That happens routinely in a police department. It's happened my whole career. And I can tell you that we have a very good mechanism in place in our police department that we take each of those complaints very seriously. We investigate each one, believe it or not. And we actually go beyond what most law enforcement agencies do, where we'll actually investigate an anonymous complaint into our police department. We do that so that the citizen has some level of trust and respect in our department that we will take what they say and take it very seriously, even if they don't have the guts to put their name to it when they make the complaint. Having said that, there's usually in those particular cases you're going to hear one side of the story when you take those complaints, and I just remind you that there's always two sides to every story. And it would do our law enforcement professionals here in Milton a great service that if you would hear those, and when you hear some of those complaints, to forward them to the police department and forward them to the general information line, because what they're going to get is one of our police supervisors on the phone with them reasonably quickly. And I can't tell you to call somebody in particular because those people cycle around based on who's here, based on what shifts here. But we have a very, very strong policy and very quick policy that deals with fact-finding in those particular cases. Thankfully, you all approved when we deployed very good technology in our cars, and in many circumstances, the interactions with our law enforcement officers are on video and audio tape. And it's really nice to take what was said in one circumstance and go back and watch what really happened. Sometimes we find that we need to take action within the agency, and sometimes we find that we're dealing with somebody that's just not satisfied because there was action that should have been taken against them that in fact it was. Typically that's the case, but occasionally we find deficiencies that we need to do more training with or take personnel action. But I would just encourage you that as you get people that are not necessarily satisfied, let us take a look and see exactly why they're not satisfied. At any point, and all of our files that result in investigations are open to the public 10 days after those investigations are completed. So we can demonstrate a history since Milton has been a city that those issues that people have brought forward have been looked into, they have been addressed in some circumstances. And in fact, in many circumstances, our officers have been exonerated based on what the complaint was simply because they acted appropriately. So I just want to let you know that mechanism exists. It seemed like there for a little while I was getting a call just about once a day on certain levels of police activity, and we looked into many of them, and I've got a videotape of a traffic stop sitting on my desk right now that if I had to teach a class on how to make a traffic stop, I'd probably show that videotape. So it's one of those things where we want to be able to look into both sides before we cast any kind of a shadow on our public servants, because in 99% of the cases they're out there doing good stuff. So that option's available to you at any point. That's what I have for tonight, unless anybody would like an update on anything in particular. And I don't know if we have any other staff reports.
Any questions?
Can I just make a comment, not to take away from that very serious discussion of complaints being noted, but did I forward you an email from last week from a citizen that sent me an email that he had gone to Fry's and our firefighters were there purchasing something for the firehouse, and that it was so heartwarming to him to see them engage the public while they were there and have the kids, take a look at the fire truck, and that it made him feel so good to know that we had our own fire services. And so
I think I picked the wrong career a long time ago, because I found out that firefighters are loved and police officers not so much. So if I ever have to do it again, I'm going to become a firefighter, I think. No, not really. Absolutely.
I'll never get to keep mine, though. 1 out of 3 will get it.
Gotcha.
Give it to one of us. Where do you go home with that?
They all perform valuable functions, and they're certainly all appreciated.
All right. Does anybody else have anything else? Questions? If not, I'm going to conclude this regular scheduled meeting. I have a motion that we adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Tartt, second by Councilmember Thurman to adjourn this meeting.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned, 7:01.
But
Fine, kids. Not